Once upon a time, there was a fisherman. He had a wife. She was a quiet and timid woman who stayed in their little cottage all day long. While he was out at sea, she made sure their home stayed clean, both inside and out. She prepared all the meals so he would have a lovely dinner to come home to. She made sure that their children were fed and bathed. Then she would wash the sheets for their bed. They both told themselves that they were happy. One day, the fisherman went out into a fog. His wife stood from the window and watched until his boat disappeared. She sighed deeply, and secretly, she wished that he would not return. But that was a horrible thing to think. He was a good man, or at least he used to be. He always brought home fish from his trips, which kept them fed and a roof over their heads. He was good with the children. She told herself that this was enough. It was just that, sometimes, when it was late and the children were already asleep, she and her husband would sit by the fireplace in silence. She would look over at him and see a longing in his eyes reflecting in the flames. She recognized the look because she often wore it herself. They told themselves they were happy. Their house was atop a hill overlooking the ocean, and the fisherman's wife would often walk out there and listen to the waves. The sound of the sea was like music for her soul. It was the only thing which brought any comfort in her life. Its song would uplift her before she headed back inside that cottage and into her small world. She often wondered what it would be like if she and her husband switched places, if she was the one who went out to sea every day and he stayed home with the children. Would they find solace in that? The fog had lifted before dinner that evening, and the fisherman's wife could see her husband pull into the docks. She used to wait for him down there. Those were the days when he would rush back home to her. But now, she simply waited in the kitchen, better to make sure that his dinner was kept hot. As he entered the cottage, his wife discovered that he was not alone. There was a woman in his grasp, a frightened woman, with big dark eyes. The type of eyes which told a story and showed the whole soul within them, the kind of eyes which broke a person's heart. The fisherman's wife could tell from her vacant expression, wet hair, and the leather pelt wrapped around her that this woman was a Selkie. She must have swam up to her husband, curious and carefree. He recognized what she was and captured her. "She will be staying here with us from now on," Fisherman explained with a smile. His wife did not protest. She wanted to tell him that this was a foolish idea, that they should set this poor creature free, but she did not say a word. She had never defied her husband before. She had never defied anyone before, actually, even as a young girl. She had always been told that her obedience was her most prized asset, such a prize that this was where it brought her, a little house full of children, and now home to her husband's captured Selkie. The first few days were an adjustment. The creature, or rather, the woman, the fisherman's wife really wasn't sure what to call her, was slow in her movements. She did not speak as she wandered up and down the little house, inspecting all of the silverware and pottery as though they were a lost language. She stared at the children as though they were foreign to her as well. They didn't seem to mind. However, they were too young to understand. She seemed consumed with all things shiny. She would hold up spoons to the window and watch for hours as the sunlight reflected off of them. The fisherman's wife found herself almost envious. Imagine living a life where the simplicity of a spoon's reflection could bring such fascination. She thinks this is what her husband sees in the Selkie, that she is a shiny new object that he wants to glisten in the window for hours. Even though he was not home, he knew that the Selkie waited for him in his house, and to him, that was enough. After a week, the fisherman's wife took the Selkie out around back to help with the laundry. The Selkie was captivated by the bubbles the soap produced, and the fisherman's wife wondered if it reminded her of sea foam. For the first time since her arrival, she smiled. Then, the fisherman's wife smiled too. When the chores were finished, and there was still enough time before her husband's return, the fisherman's wife stood outside of her house to listen to her sea's song. She danced alongside the waves as the lullaby soothed her soul once again. Only this time, she realized that she was not standing out there alone. She turned to see the Selkie, standing there, watching her, no judgment on her face, just those dark, heartbreak eyes. Soon, she stepped closer to the fisherman's wife and began a dance of her own. Like all of her movements, it was slow and calculated, but graceful and delicate. The sort of movement which only comes from a creature who had lived a lifetime in the sea. The fisherman's wife found that she could not take her eyes off of the sight. Then for a moment, she felt something she hadn't in years. She felt truly happy. "Where's my dinner?" came her husband's voice. The two stopped their dancing to look back at the little cottage. It was then that the fisherman's wife realized how low the sun had set. She had never lost track of time like that before. There, in the doorway, stood her husband, his face turned down in a scowl as he looked at her. But when his eyes shifted over to the Selkie, he smiled. His wife could not decide which face was more frightening. All the same, the two of them returned to the house, and the fisherman's wife began to cook dinner. After that evening, she became much more careful around the Selkie. She did not think the creature was dangerous, but she acknowledged that she didn't fully understand her either. She was a being as mysterious as the sea, and she belonged in such a place. The fisherman's wife still found herself staring out into the ocean, and wondered if she belonged to such a place as well. She sometimes wondered if that had been her reason for marrying her husband in the first place, because she knew it would bring her closer to the sea. She had never known what she had wanted from life except to be close to the ocean. She wondered if that was how the Selkie felt now that she was trapped in this house. It wasn't fair. Her husband should have known better than to do this to a creature who had no business being kept like a pet. The fisherman's wife decided right then and there that she would search around the house for the Selkie's pelt. It wouldn't be difficult, considering her husband spent the day away on his boat and expected to come home to a clean house. If he asked where the Selkie went, she would simply say that the creature had discovered her own pelt and made her escape. Who would he be to question this? And so, the fisherman's wife began her search. She looked high up on the roof and down below in their cellar. She looked within their tool shed and out in the garden. She searched every room in their little cottage. She turned up the floorboards and every hidden corner. Yet, she found nothing. The fisherman's wife sat down and thought about where her husband could have possibly hidden the pelt. But the answer came over her all too quickly. Of course, where else would he keep it but in his boat, far away from them all day long? Feeling discouraged, his wife began to cry. She couldn't remember the last time she cried. She supposed it must have been around the time the children were born. She was not miserable with her family. She just wasn't happy either. She was only happy when she was dancing out by the sea with the Selkie. That was when she realized that she did not want the Selkie to leave. The creature had given her something her family never seemed to. She had given the fisherman's wife company. Without her, no matter how many children they surrounded themselves with, the fisherman's wife would always feel alone. There was a little sound, and she saw that she was no longer alone in the room. The fisherman's wife turned up to see the Selkie standing at the doorway. The creature walked over and took a seat next to her. She still spoke no words, but there was something in the look she gave which made the fisherman's wife understand what they needed to do. That night, when her husband came home, the house was clean and his dinner was hot. He frowned at his wife and smiled at the Selkie. When his wife put the children to bed, he took the Selkie to their bedroom. While they were in there, his wife strode down the docks where he had tied up his boat. She rummaged through his things, but it did not take long for her to discover the leather pelt amidst his fishing supplies. She was quiet as she entered the house once more, and even more quiet as she opened the door to their bedroom. She did not want to wake her husband. The moonlight glinted through the window as she stepped inside. Its glow revealed the Selkie as she sat up in bed staring down at the man who kidnapped her. The fisherman's wife joined her in looking at him. He had not been a good husband, but he was a good father. She had been a good wife, but perhaps not a good mother. and maybe this was the way things were supposed to be. She could not break something which had already been broken. She handed over the leather pellet to the Selkie, who took it and ran. The fisherman's wife sprinted after her, no longer caring if they were making noise. It didn't matter now. The two of them continued to run until they were out of the house, down the hill, and at the shoreline. The Selkie walked into the ocean until it was up to her knees, and then she began to pull the pelt over her head. Her temporary pause gave the fisherman's wife a moment to catch up. She climbed into her husband's boat as the transformation concluded, and where once stood a woman was now a seal. The fisherman's wife chased after her until the sun began to peek up and she realized that she could no longer see her house. This was real. It was truly happening. She was leaving her life behind. At that moment, the Selkie jumped onto the boat. The sudden movement startled the fisherman's wife, but as she looked over at the creature, she saw the same look in her eyes as she had before, the one which was full of understanding and empathy, the one which told the fisherman's wife that she was free at last. Then, the two of them headed out further, into the sea.